Good day, Mzansi. I'm Daphne Naidoo from the Gauteng Department of Social Development. I'm here going to cover today a very important topic, and that topic is to deal with child abandonment and filicide. Now, I always believe that knowledge means power because it becomes power to make better choices with regards to the topic that I'm covering today. When we look at pregnancy, I'm not just going to focus on mothers that are adults that are having children, but also children having children. Now, when we look at our pregnancy itself, a woman giving birth, we talk about 3 trimesters of their pregnancy. And trimesters are broken down into 3 months, a 3-month period. So you're having 3, 6, and you're following, within the 9-month period. Having said that, we having abortion, or rather abortions, are considered to be legal in this country, and generally within the first 3 months is when one will choose to have an abortion, because it's a window period. It's within the 26 weeks, so it's ideal to have an abortion if one's considering to have an abortion within that period. But we also have, where the 3 months have lapsed, an abortion is allowed, but in that period, there are certain conditions, and conditions come with where you may have medical and surgical procedures thereafter. And if you get to see the Choice of Termination of Pregnancy Act, any child is allowed to have an abortion. However, when you look at the Children's Act, children from the ages of 12 need the parents' consent, especially when there's surgical and medical procedures. So obviously, when it comes to your 2nd and 3rd trimester, there's more conditions placed around that abortion, and would need anesthesia or any of those things that you would require, or medication, and therefore your parents need to give that permission. Now, why I'm getting to that, it's because you will see I'll be leading to your filicide, because we're having more and more children giving birth, or wanting to have an abortion, go to illegal abortion outlets instead of those recognized clinics and so forth that is government run or affiliated to government to allow that abortion. Now, we're having parents that are having children. Even more so is the fact that we are having filicide is, by the way, is killing of one's own child. That is what filicide means. But we're also having neonaticide. Neonaticide is when the killing of an infant within 24 hours after your child has been born. We're having more and more of that come through, besides your abortions, your illegal abortions. And remember, if your child was breathing at that time, you had an abortion, an illegal, and thereafter it was found that this child lived, you can be found for the concealment of your pregnancy. If you cannot prove that you had the child was breathing, then you can be held accountable for concealment of your pregnancy, because if you give birth or you have a child or you were pregnant, you should be informing the relevant authorities, which is your clinics and your hospitals. And so we're having those babies being dumped out there, without you informing anyone. Thereafter, like I said, neonatal side is when the killing of a child after you have given birth within the 24 hours. And then infanticide is when you're killing of one's child within 1 year. And what causes infanticide? We have a lot of babies that are being born with colic. And with colic babies, we're finding that, parents are not able to understand why the child cries a lot, because that is part of the symptoms of being of having a colic child. So what happens is parents decide they're so stressed, they're so annoyed, they're so frustrated because they're doing everything and this child doesn't seem to stop crying. So what they do, they shake their child. And when you shake your child and you continuously shake your child, the child is going to stop, because the child is being concussed. So obviously, it's the consciousness is not there. So you think that, hey, my child has stopped. So what do? You shake your child even further, because you're thinking that this child is now not responding, which is good because the child has stopped crying, not realizing that you have actually concussed your child and therefore the child is not crying. When you do that, then you're shifting the brain as well. And then injuries, internal injuries happen, and then children die. So these are all the different aspects with regards to your filicide and killing of children. Sometimes we do it unintentionally because we don't know where to seek help, where to get this information from. So we're finding more and more children being dumped because this is what has happened to them, or the concealment of birth, at the very beginning, because we don't go to the right people to have access to the services. Now I already spoke about, when you have a child, the best thing is also when you are planning, when you are having sex and you are planning, some of us don't plan to have the child, and the child is a consequence because of the sex. And we don't realize there is contraceptives out there. If you are planning to have this or have sex, think about using contraceptive, because that is one of the best preventative measures that you could have, let alone abstaining from sex, which is 100% foolproof that you will not fall pregnant. But if you make a choice that you are going to have sex, then please note, especially your teenagers and your children, from the age of 12, you can access or buy contraceptives, and nobody is not allowed to sell you this contraceptive, because actually it's a criminal offense. If somebody decides not to sell you the contraceptives, it is a criminal offense. So you can have access to that. It's free. You go to any clinics, you can have access to these contraceptives. Condoms is the easiest to get access of, but other contraceptives as well, and you're allowed to do that. So we're getting at right at the beginning, that is part of your prevention. Then obviously when you do fall pregnant, this is the services these are the things you need to be aware of. Now let's talk about an even more serious issue as well. Now you have this baby, right? You couldn't get rid of the baby in this period that I was talking about. So what do we now do? We then want to give up this baby, and we want to leave this baby because we think that nobody is there to take this child, so let me dump this child. Let me dump this child in bins. Let me dump this child in the pit toilets. Let me dump this child in the open veld or in the garbage, bags and so forth. Now that unfortunately is a criminal offense. Lots of people ask them, Mrs. Naidoo, where do we get access then if I really can't take care of this child? Okay, fine, I could not have an abortion within that period. I gave birth, and what do I do? Do I have any rights as a mother? What are our rights as mothers, or somebody that's given birth? I really can't take care of this child for whatever reason. Now, absolutely, you have rights as mothers out there. Whether you're a child mother or whether you are an adult mother, you have rights. You have a constitutional right to say that you do not want your child. Up front, you can say you do not want your child. Mothers, though, have a legal obligation to safely relinquish their babies. So you can relinquish your child, but you have a legal obligation to safely relinquish your child. And where must you then, relinquish? We'll get to that point. But please do understand up front, safe relinquishment, which you're obligated, right, to safely relinquish your child. But safe relinquishment does not equate to anonymity, because anonymity equates to abandonment. So please understand that concept. So in other words, you can safely relinquish your child. You can say, I do not want to take care of this child, and you can give up that child. Now, where do you need to give up that child? Where can you, and what facilities, what professionals do you give up this child? So think about it. 99% of the time, most of us give birth at the hospitals. If not clinics, then hospitals. We have access to those facilities. At the hospital, you can speak to any social worker, any nurse, any doctor, and say, I cannot take this child with me. Do not risk taking the child home and knowing you're going to dump this child, knowing you're not in a state, knowing that you do not have family support, knowing that you may, cause something there after this to this child. This is a life, right? So if you do not want this child at that given time, you need to speak to the nurses, doctors, and social workers at your hospitals or your clinics to say, I cannot take care of my child, and therefore can the state take care of the child or take over. As a result, the nurses, doctors, social workers in hospitals will then remove the child from you or keep the child contact Department of Social Development or our child protection organizations to take over the care of the child. However, please, it means when I talk about anonymity and or giving your details, you need to give your details to those social workers, to those doctors, to those nurses, so that we are able to keep in contact with you. Why? Because most times, mothers do have serious issues that they're dealing with. And at that given time, they may not be, they're making a decision based on the situation they faced at that given time. It doesn't mean that that would be the reality forever. Equally so, as mothers have rights, so does that child. That child has a constitutional right to his or her mother, father, siblings, extended family members, community members, and so forth. Their culture, their nationality, and so forth. So having said that, the fact that we look at the child's best interest is of paramount importance. It means that we need to consider the child's rights as well. And the child, because it's paramount, it means it's of utmost importance. So as a result, it means due services must be given to the mother so that she's able to make an informed decision, of whether that is going to be a sustained decision or not. Because many a times we find that mothers decide, look, and the decision that I made up front, a year later, 2 years later, that is still the decision the mother sticks with. And as a result, we then realize, okay, there's no chances of family reunification. There's no services we can still provide. And thereafter, we then can look at alternate family placement or permanency placement for this child into a family, because we can then look at placing the child in foster care, in children's homes, but ultimately, and the ultimate goal would be also for permanency, would be adoption of this child. Now, those are the options one has. Please also understand that as a mother, you do not make the child alone. There's also fathers that are involved. And the fathers and mothers have parental rights and responsibilities towards the children, and it is embedded in our legislation, which is the Children's Act. So because you have certain obligations, because you have certain rights, and remember, when you talk about parental rights and responsibility, you have a responsibility and rights to care for your child, to have contact for your child, to be a guardian of your child, and so forth. So these are all your parental rights and responsibilities. And if you want to forgo those rights and responsibilities, it only can be done via the courts. Now let's take other family members. Lots of time our family members want to step up. Lots of time they want to assist. Lots of time we find grandparents, uncle, aunties, especially from a cultural context, from a Ubuntu context, we're finding extended family members that want to take care of our children. But remember, even that should be a legal process, because they should be coming to court, the children's court, and wanting to have parental rights and responsibilities over those children so that they can make informed decisions on those children. And it's important that we understand that we need to get to that point. Now, we're also finding that more and more parents or mothers wanting to leave their babies, or rather, let's say, abandon their babies. These babies are kept in these stalls, are kept in the bins and so forth. And what do you think eventually happens to these children? They die. And then what are you going to be held accountable for? Murder. Yet you could have given up this child. I spoke about where can you give up this child. The starting point, 99%, will be your clinics and will be your hospitals. But guess what? If you walk away from those hospitals and you still decide that you cannot take care of this child, you can still approach a police official, a SAPS police station. They're all over in communities. SAPS can then remove your children as well. So your police officials have a legal duty if a child is in need of care and protection, and such children will be seen in need of care and protection. Those SAPS officials can remove your children. You can leave with them. If you can't go to a SAPS official, and you also have a right to go to any Gauteng, or rather any Department of Social Development, social workers. You can go to the offices at any given time, and they can assist you to remove your child from you, or even our child protection organizations, which is our designated child protection organization, which is like your child welfares across the country, that can assist to also take your children. But guess what? Children are covered, and these services are available to you 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Why? Because if you look at it, your SAPS officials and your hospitals are operating every day, while social workers maybe in Department of Social Development and our child protection organization do work generally from Mondays to Fridays from 7:30 to 4. So you have access to these facilities at any given time. So why do you decide to put yourself at risk, let alone the child, by dumping this child, by abandoning this child, by remaining anonymous? We also have the baby savers out there, where you have these boxes and you think you can just leave your baby there and disappear. Now, like I said to you, abandonment is a crime. And as mothers, we want to do the right thing. We said to you, you have a right to say you want to relinquish your child. We said that you need to relinquish your child safely. That is your obligation, a legal obligation. You cannot put your child at risk by placing the child in any of these facilities or felt or bins or what have you, placing them at risk, because most of them do die. And if you find out that if you've done such and you didn't do the caring thing, then obviously you will be held accountable through the criminal courts. Now, you also have an ultimate option of saying that you do not want your child and you rather give up your child for adoption. That is also what you can do. So please also consider that, because that is the most loving thing you can also do, is to say that you do not want your child and you want to give up that child for adoption. What you cannot do is decide that the child does not have rights and you're the only one as a parent has rights, or the father does not have rights, because the father has rights and his extended family has rights as well. So because it takes two to make this child, or it took two to make this child. So I'm hoping that this information will help you or to assist you on what to do when you do have a child and you cannot take care of this child for whatever is the reason. And like I said, we also have a legal obligation. The law mandates the departments to make sure that there's assistance to you, there's assistance to your family, and so forth, so that we are here to help where we can. And ultimately, the choice is yours. The right choice will determine, what happens to you, your family, and this child that we're talking about. So from my side, I'm hoping that as a department, as we empower you as communities out there, that the message is spread, so that we start doing the right thing, around the protection of our children. Remember, the child is voiceless. The child needs us. The child cannot protect his or herself, and therefore the child becomes, where their care, protection, and rights becomes of paramount importance as a department. And I'm assuming that you as communities, as well as you as a parent, there is a humane side that is in you that will start making the right decisions going forward. Bye-bye. Until next time.